Well, this is just, I think this is a conversation not just about me, I hope, but about why we're here and about mentoring and things that have arisen in your heart and mind, and not just from me. I'll be glad to contribute anything I can, but this is time just to talk and share as friends and ideas and thoughts. If you want to interrogate me, Singleton, you can.
I'm curious about your spiritual habits. What has kept you abiding in Christ over the years?
He has. I think that's the secret for all of us, isn't it? He's done this. I look back on it and realize, I told Ann this morning, thinking after our prayer time up there, and that last poem of Jessica Powers talked about how God made us before we were ever born. He knew what we were going to be. And I'm an accident twice, because my mother was, as you know, was young and pregnant, but also Jeannie's mother didn't want her. She was the last in the family, and she was about 40. So we are here as a result of 2 accidents. How about that? But we all are here, not accidentally, but for God's purpose, to reflect Him, and to hopefully let others see that in our lives. So, a lot of what I learned early, Kathy, as I may have mentioned the other day, was from my mother, who taught me to kneel and pray and memorize John 17 and see books about Christian leaders and repeat prayers after her. I think if there's been any change, and I've had, so many influences in my life, it'd be hard to enumerate them. I think in the last few years, it's been more of what we've been talking about. Less talk and more quiet, being alone with the Lord. For me now in the mornings, almost every morning, I'll start by, if the weather's nice, go out on the porch, and Buddy will follow me out there. We sit together. I'll often read a piece of poetry first, just to, not necessarily from a Christian poet, just as something that may help me to be alert to what's going on around me. I'm using Pray As You Go now. Do you know that app? And I learned that from Tom Lynn, because Tom, the head of InterVarsity. So ever since their group met in January, I've been using that, and I found that so good, because the song you have, the scripture, and then the questions that are raised. So I found that that's very good. Before that, I used the Methodist lectionary for a long time, Ken. It comes out of upper room someplace, and that helped take me through scriptures, to read different scriptures. I journal. I'm not journaling quite as much now as I did several years ago, but that time of quiet in the morning, just being quiet, being with the Lord, listening perhaps to some music or singing a song, thinking ahead to the day, and not with many words. I find I pray less words than I used to. I want the ones I pray to be more meaningful to me. So that's the habit that's there most of the day. I don't do as Jim thought he did, I was going to do when he came down the mountain years ago, pray 12 hours a day. But I really do believe that every thought that we have that we direct toward the Lord is a prayer. He knows our mind. He knows our hearts, whether or not we say it or bow our head. He knows He knows what's there, and it's an aspiration. And there are a lot of different books I've read. The last couple of years, I've been using a little book by George MacDonald of prayers. I didn't even know they were there, so I just found it in my office. He wrote a prayer for every day, and they're very, very beautiful poetic prayers. So I found that oftentimes those speak to my condition. So it's a variety of things for me. And being around friends like this, times of renewal. Jeannie, in our family, when the children were young, we had a little bit more settled prayer time. Jeannie finds it very difficult to pray out loud. I think she probably prays more than anybody I know as she wakes up in the morning. But saying out loud prayers aren't easy for her, partly because of her voice, which is weak because of some polio she had years ago. So it's less formal and more just the ongoing. I have a prayer bowl I have a room in the house, my little study there, have a little round bowl, and I have pictures in there, and whoever's on the top of that, if I have a picture of them, I'll pray for them for that day.
Many parts of you do mentoring. And I would just love to see how you would define all of those kind of job descriptions or practices. They include spiritual direction or formation, but they seem to be many more pieces. So I think you wrote it down.
In the British Parliament, they say I require notice of that question if they're not ready for it. So he gave me notice of that question yesterday. I have 10 pages here that I wrote out just since you and I talked yesterday. Now, you and I are going to go off quietly for that together. No, I made a copy of something. It was a good question. So I'm going to pass this around. I'll have to read it to you because nobody, including myself, can read my writing. So I did a little diagram here of just thinking what's really involved in spiritual mentoring. And so just have one of that. You can the different parts of it. Let me say to start with, in the center of it, I have under mentors, spiritual guide, just a simple little diagram. A friend of mine told me years ago that evangelism and discipleship is helping people to take the next step toward Christ or in Christ. I really like that. Helping people to make the next step toward Christ or in Christ. And he drew this little diagram with a cross at the center, a couple of stick figures. They don't look like an artist, do they? Just scribble those out. So I thought in this, there's a book called The Critical Journey. Some of you may know that. It's by Haberg, and I wish we brought it here. You know that book. It's a really good book on the critical journey of the spiritual life. We're talking here, of course, about spiritual mentoring, of helping people to become all that God has called them to be. And so I wrote down a number of things here, not just about the activity we do in mentoring, but who we are, because who we are, our being and our doing go together. The first thing I put down there, going in a circle around here, is to truly be a kingdom seeker. I've said to young leaders since we started our leadership work years ago, be a kingdom seeker, not an empire builder. But I think that the very first thing about mentoring is it Christ's kingdom that's at our heart. And his prayer to the Father, your will be done. Christ sought the kingdom. I always do the things that my Father asked me to do. I listen to him. I'm here to do his will. So I think, first of all, a mentor has to be a kingdom seeker. And the people that I would look for mentoring are people that you sense, well, I think they're just about building their own empire. Maybe they need to stop and say, how can I be a kingdom seeker? So I think that's fair, which is our own relationship to the Lord. The second thing I've called is being a seer, in the sense that Jesus was a seer. For Jesus, vision was not so much some huge picture that he had out there, some great plan. It was the person at the next corner. It was seeing that person there, really seeing them, seeing who they are. I know who you are, Simon. I know who you're going to be, Peter. Nathaniel, I see you sitting there under that tree. You're a man without guile. He was a seer as soon as he saw people. So I said the second thing I would say in mentoring is I want to be able to see people as Jesus sees them. I can't perfectly, as he had spiritual X-ray vision. But to be able to see what is in them and see potential in them that they can't see in themselves. And so when we're in my own mentoring, when you started just a couple of people and then the Arrow program and then what we're doing now, it was really seeing men and women, listening to their call, listening to their heart. I think you need a bit of spiritual shrewdness about this with people, because when people come up, boy, they look great, they sound great. Remember, one young man wanted to be part of our Sandy Ford scholarship program, and he came to be interviewed, and he said, my dad said I'm the next Billy Graham. Whole group said, we're not so sure, that that's there. So I think it takes some discernment in seeing someone. I see their passion, I see their heart, I see something in them, I see the way they talk, I see the way they ask questions, I see respect, I see their mind, their capacities, and something just says, I believe God has something in mind, as He does for all of us, but for that person. And it's hard even to put that into words. I don't know how did we first met up there at Pittsburgh at the Trinity Episcopal School, and I don't know what I saw you in at first, but I thought you were going to be someday like you are now, which is really great. But there was a kind of an attraction that God brings prayerfully. So I think to call this, Lord, help me to see as you see. Third thing I'd say is a mentor must be a person of a great heart. Not just a brave heart, but a great heart. In Pilgrim's Progress, wasn't there a great heart in that? Someone who has an open heart toward others, an open heart toward the kingdom, of really seeing someone saying, I want anything I have, I'd like to give with you and share with you. I look at two men who showed a great heart to me in ministry. When I was the chairman of the Lausanne Committee, I'd never chaired anything like that before. I was probably in my 40s. And there were two men who came along beside me. One was Bishop Jack Dane, who was an Anglican bishop from Australia, been the chairman of Lausanne before me. He'd been a missionary in Pakistan, India, and a senior bishop in Sydney, a great friend of Billy Graham's. And the other one had been the chairman of Lausanne before me. The other one was a man named Tom Zimmerman, who was the head of the Assemblies of God. Tom knew a great deal about finance. I knew absolutely nothing about finance, but he was very wise in those things. And anything that they had, they shared with me. I felt they really cared about me. They were 20 years my senior. But I just thought anything that they have, they're willing to share. And these were men I saw they'd been through much, they'd learned through much, they'd prayed through much. They'd have many life experiences. Jack especially had been in the Navy and the Army and a missionary in Pakistan, and in Australia, he'd been a pastor, he'd been a bishop. Tom Zimmerman had business experience, and he'd been a pastor. They'd been through much, and they learned. They were men who were constantly learning. And they were willing to pass that on to me. They could have just said, hey, we could tell you how to do things. They were there for me. They were willing to share anything they had. The other thing that goes next from that is I think a mentor has to be a learner. We've got to have that childlike sense of curiosity and imagination and wanting to learn. And that was true of those guys. They didn't just kind of shrink back at some point in their lives. They kept on going. And I learned so much from being with younger men and women. I may have a little bit of wisdom to share with them and some things, the experience I've had, but they just, how they see the world, how they see ministry means so much to me. So to be a lifelong learner, not just, I got a lot to teach you. I have a few things maybe I can teach you. I can tell you a few mistakes I've made, actually quite a few that I've learned from, but to be a learner. And then the other thing is to be it goes right along with that, to be a divester. We think of investing in others, but how about divesting ourselves of all that has been? Jesus did that, didn't he? He took off his outer garment, washed the feet. Just divesting, being willing to give away again the things that have been given to us, and to give away our positions, which are so important so often before the world. To be a soul friend. That came very clear to me when I started reading about the Celts. The ancient Celts used to talk men and women who were their soul friends on the journey. I grew up I was only child with a difficult mother and father, their relationship. I had friends, but there came a time in my life when I knew I personally needed some whole friends in a deeper way. This ministry here started out of a wounded man. I'd done a fair bit in ministry. I'd helped a lot of people to know the Lord and to come to Christ. I'd helped others to know how to do it. And there came a time in my life when we went through a difficult time with some of our team at that time and some of our board of misunderstanding. I probably wasn't as wise as I could have been. But I learned at that point, I really need some people who understand what it's like to go through the pain of misunderstanding. And I could still picture a group of younger people, And Kevin's longtime associate, Jim Osterhaus, met with me in a mountain by a fireplace. And we just listened. They listened to me. I listened to them. I learned from them. And really, out of that group is where the Sigdar group began, where some of the people who had been in that group. Were you there that day? Some of the others were there. But that made me realize how much we need soul friends on our journey with whom we can really be open, where they can be vulnerable. I think of one guy that I've mentored, not anybody known to any of you here, came to a retreat in Charlotte, and he said, I find I'm being very attracted to a certain woman in my church. He was able to share that with me and make that relationship right, provide some distance in that. I don't think he could have done that if I hadn't been able to share pain myself, a different kind of pain perhaps. But to be the friend on the journey, to be a listener, the great gift of listening. I told you the other night about the dean of the seminar who was retiring, came and I listened to him for 2 hours. Attentive listening, heart listening, without rushing. The gift of listening. And then to be a challenger, to say, as I said to Aaron a little while ago, what is your vision? Mark says I said that to him back. Said that's the first question I asked him. What is your vision? And are you going to follow that vision? So to be a challenger, that word you can't read is prompter. To be a prompter of others, to say, go for it. I see that God has given you that, and I challenge you to follow that vision. And so all of those things are part of it. And then to be a connector with other people. I think back to what Billy did for me. Billy was not a close-up mentor in the sense that we spent a long time sitting and talking and praying together. There was some of that. He let me look in on his private meetings sometimes. He'd be having a meeting with the mayor of a town on a crusade and say, well, you just come and be there. And I just sit and listen to how he did it with them. He never preached at them. He would tell them about someone he met with and how they talked about Christ. And he opened that door for me. Asked me, made so many different connections in my life. So opening doors for people. You ought to meet so-and-so. That comes very naturally to me. I want you to meet so-and-so. But the gift of connecting, and to someone who knows a whole lot more than I do. I'll often say to someone, you know, I'm listening to your problem. I can't help much, but hey, Jim Osterhaus up there works with Kevin. He'll talk with you for an hour. And then to be a believer. To say, I really believe in you. I believe God has called you. I see your heart. I see even through the difficulty you've gone through that you're struggling, but I believe God's going to take you through it. I remember talking to another Ken. This one I can tell you who it is, Ken Shigematsu, that some of you may know. I met him when he's in Gordon Conwell Seminary. And we drove one day. He drove me to see someone. I leaned back and said, Ken, tell me about you. So for the next hour, I just listened to him. And then when he was called to the church in Vancouver, where he is now, he was 32 years old. It was an old church that was declining to the point it was about ready to close. There were probably 50 old people there. And God said to him, 10th church. And I remember sitting outside that church with him, and Ken said, well, I think God's called me, but I don't know what it takes. They've had 20 pastors in 20 years. I don't know have what it takes. And I remember saying to him, Ken, God's an artist. He doesn't do copies, he does originals. And he has a plan for that church for you that wasn't anybody else. And God has blessed that church. It's grown, it's multiplied. They've had quite a recognition in the city. I've seen him grow in his ministry. But it was, I think, a matter of saying, I really believe in you and I trust in you. So those things come at different times in different ways. Not all of them are as prominent in one relationship as the other, but I think the thing to discern is always, what is God saying to this person? They may not know what that next step is. Well, let's think about it, pray about it, to help you take that next step, whatever it is. Because God's the mentor. He's the evangelist, he's the mentor, he's there before we are. His Holy Spirit is working their lives. My birth was an accident, but I'm here today because of an accident that God used. So anyway, that's sort of the circle of those things. Jim, I don't know whether that's what you were asking for, and if you want to ask more about any of those, I'll be glad to act with you on it.
Thank you for doing that. That's very important.
Well, you were a prompter. I had to sit down and say, oh, I don't know how to answer that. So maybe that's part way. Brother Joshua.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on one of the points that you ask people, challenger point, where you say you ask what is your vision and how you're going to follow that vision.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you to share with us if you have ever encountered, I'm sure you have, people whom you listen to their vision, and even though it's couched in very Christian language, you know it's about them. And how did you handle that?
Say that one more. People
whom you listen to the vision and shared with
right.
them, and even though it sounds very Christian, it's obvious to you that it's about them. And how did you handle it?
Well, with that one person, I just said, he didn't get the scholarship, and I think we told him that what his dad said to him was not necessarily God's plan for his life. I think you can sense, we ought to all have dreams, but the dreams you have to have some sense of how to reach out toward that dream. And if someone I have some vague idea, but when I started Leighton Ford Ministries, I've been with the Graham Association for 30 years. We were starting a new ministry. I'd never led a ministry like that before. And it's a very simple thing. Dr. Ted Engstrom, who was the head of World Vision at that time, wonderful man, a friend. Everybody thought Ted was their best friend. He didn't have to work at that, he just was. But I said, Ted, tell me what we ought to do about this. What do you think? And he listened to me. He said, great. He said, you haven't written enough down. Write it down, that vision, and how you're going to go about it. He forced me to go down and say, all right, if that's what God has called me to, how is it going to happen? So I think just to say, it's not just a dream, it's got to become reality. Do they have any sense of how they're practically going to go about it? That'd be one question I would ask. And I would also say, who else was with you in this? Is this just your own singular idea? Are there others who share this, who've seen in you the qualities that would make you a leader in this? So that kind of question. And also it's, how do you sense a falsity in someone? How do you sense bravado rather than courage? You can't always immediately, but there's almost a sixth sense as you pray about it that, well, this may sound good, but how much prayer is behind this? And even I guess what I said to you, Mark, you don't know yet. Take 2 or 3 years. Wait. Not that I thought you didn't have the right vision, but I think there's questions like that, and see how someone responds to them. Are they receptive? Are they a learner? Can you tell that they're open to being questioned and being challenged? Those are some of the things that I think of. And others of you, this isn't just about me. How do you do it? Because I'm still learning. How would you do it, Ken?
I think, like you said, it's a lot of the sixth sense.
Yeah.
You just get a sense of it, and I think sometimes just to ask them to do something that's a bit humbling.
Yes.
Instead of giving them the front seat to have them do something else for a while and see if they'll.
That's good.
Actually do it, and if they don't, that may answer your question pretty rapidly.
Yeah. And it's good to probe with others who know whether they've shown that spirit before. Like when J. John wrote me, Michael Green wrote me about J. John. Here was someone who was vouching for him that I thought, well, he's known him better than I have. But yeah, I think that's. I remember when we traveled in Japan years ago, there were 2 young men who traveled with us who had just started with our ministry. And I was with my translator, who was Stephen Mitsuhashi. He was a wonderful translator. And he had breakfast with one of those guys, and he said, he's a wonderful young missionary. He's going to be good. He was with another, and he said, I've never met anybody as arrogant in my life. So just to see how other people reacted to them helped me to. And the first guy was a good missionary, and the second was very arrogant, and he's gotten rid of some of that too. Like all of us, God's worked in his life wonderfully. Okay.
I think there's an 11.
Okay, please. I'll write it down.
And it's hard to describe, but at least for me and maybe a few others I know, I think you've also played a role that would be like a father. And it's not that one can replace a father, but I think when we lose our fathers in life, God begins to bring kind of a composite father. And for many of us, the love and attention that have come through this have been like the good father, and may have been actually like a father that we didn't entirely get. And that has done an amazing work in reminding us what God the Father is like. I don't know if you can sign up to be a father, but that's one of the, I think that's number 11.
Okay. Thank you, son.
Father.
You're young enough. You're old enough to be a grandfather and young enough to be a son. No, let me tell you one other little story here. A young man was, I think he was in our Arrow program. He's a pastor in Texas, and he came for a personal 3-day retreat with me. And he said, I grew up on a hog farm in Arkansas, and he said my father died when he was maybe 15 or 16, like something like that. And he said, I can remember going out to the hog pen, and I had to slop the pigs. My kid sister was standing there just bawling. And he said, stop that bawling. And he said, my father was gone, and he said, I came to the retreat. Now, this isn't just about me. But he said, he went up to the house. There was a terrible storm. He said, I sat there looking, the storm comes through the windows. The rain slashing on the windows. He said, I felt so safe there. But again, it went all the way back, the tears that came again. I mean, that was the loss of a father. I remember a Korean American guy. He was in our Arrow program. And we took a ride up here in the mountains. He told me a story. He said, when I was in high school, he said, I came home from school one day and said, I had a really good day. I want to tell my dad about it. He was sitting there reading the newspaper. He said, Dad, I want to tell you about my day. He said, Father, put his paper down. He said, let me tell you about it. His father said, okay, put the paper back up. He said, I've decided I'd never tell him anything again. He said, that's been 15 years. And I remember we stood in a parking lot not far from here, and he wept in my arms for 45 minutes. My shirt was soaked. But that also opened him up again to the, and I think we do, whatever our age, we can represent our Heavenly Father in that way. Yeah.
You've mentioned the power of questions. You've mentioned what is your vision, or tell me about your life. So I know questions is a powerful tool that you've used with people. You've mentioned that as a testimonial. What are some of your favorite questions, and when you're asking those questions, what are you doing while the person is talking? Is there some sort of process that you use by which you take the answers and you're somehow going to do something with it beyond that space?
Yes, but I don't know what the questions are. There are some generic questions that we all ask, and some very good ones that Mary Kate mentioned the other day. I'm taking notes. I usually have a piece of paper there and just taking notes on something. Until often I'll notice there's a hesitation, and someone, I don't know what question I ask. It might be something about the family background or something, or an incident. Tell me more about that. And the person sort of, I wait and say, tell me more about that. That's all it is. Or especially if tears come, where are the tears from? Say some of those old spiritual teachers used to say, pay attention to tears. Pay attention to tears. That's revealing something that's going on in someone's life. So for me, it's not so much what is the question as what is the intensity of what someone's saying. Either they're talking a lot about it or do they just choke up. And often there's something there which is a hurt or a dream or something in the past experience they've had. So it's not something. It's something that comes in the conversation. Wouldn't you find that yourself, Mary Kate or Ann, in your work with people? So it's really just paying attention to what's the emotion here, what's happening to them, and then asking what seems to be the question that might unlock that.
I want to recall an experience we had together and ask you if you can reflect on what was going on. There was a mosque in Charlotte that invited the two of us to speak. There had been a burning of a Koran in North Carolina, a copy of a Koran, and so we were there together.
That's right, we went.
Asked us to speak, and I remember, and so we both did. And I remember you talking about the importance of the Bible to you, how you would never put another book on top of the Bible. I mean, I was sort of raised the same way. It just seems wrong to have a book on top of the Bible. But I remember you talking about how important those scriptures were to you, and so my question, and you just connected with them. And how significant that was. So my question is, if you can remember, if you recall that, what were you trying to, as an evangelist, as a deeply committed Jesus follower, what were you trying to accomplish by saying yes to the invitation to be there, and then by what you said?
That was off Central Avenue, wasn't it? Yes, I remember we went there. A long time ago now, we did that. Well, first of all, I thought we were there just representing Jesus at that point because they were hurting a lot. Was that after 9/11? Probably, maybe.
I think it was
sometime after that. I think I wanted to. Maybe it was that there are some Muslims, maybe a lot of them, who think our faith is not real to us. It's a facade, and we're a very secular people, and I wanted them to know how deeply we believed ourselves, that God speaks, and I wanted them to think about the Bible, I guess. I was hoping maybe some of them are going to read it, because there's one person I'd read about who's going to a mosque regularly in Cairo and sitting down there and having with the Muslim scholars, not to debate with them, but to read the Bible with them. It's an interesting story. I can't remember the man's name right now. Some of you may have met him. And he'll read the Sermon on the Mount with them and say, I'm a follower of Jesus. This is the way I should live. Do you think am I living like this? So it's interesting how we enter into that kind of dialogue with them. So I guess I just wanted them to know we were there because of our faith. Our faith led them to come and say, we're sorry and we want you to be protected. Yeah.
Just recalled that.
Yeah.
Powerful.
I'd forgotten that. Yeah, I'm glad you're.
You reflect on
Yeah. Sure.
I meet a lot with students who are wounded, and you've mentioned your own woundedness. Many of them wounded from broken family systems. Do you recall what your healing process was? Was it something that just gradually over time you were healed from, I don't know what you would name it, abandonment or did you go through some sort of process that you also lead others through that is specifically around being healed from family trauma?
Betrayal.
Yeah, the one I was referring to, of course, was the early one of being adopted. That was not a big trauma to me. I didn't think much about it until my mother said I was adopted, and I said, that's wonderful. But the fight between my mother and father was really waking night, hearing them screaming. Healing to that was meeting Jeannie and finding that wonderful, secure love in her. No, the feeling of betrayal, that was very hard. I just got so hurt, so angry at that. I felt it was so unfair. Other people being hurt in that too. So I felt rage about it. And the little group that met with me, I told up in the mountains, a good counselor that we met with who helped me to talk through that, and some other people who I knew, friends who became my allies and spoke up and helped me very much. So and then I remember being in England. I told you about Jack Dane, who is my spiritual father, the bishop from Australia and India and so forth. I was in England for one of our aero programs over there, and Jack had been my ally in this. He really faced a couple of people down for their untruths. And I was there, and Jack said, Leighton, sometimes you can win by losing and you can lose by winning. He said, you've got to find a way somehow just to let this go. And that was several years after the disruption. And I can remember Irv and I were there up in the north of England. And I remember walking down a country path, and I just stopped there, and I picked a stick up off the ground, and I just took it and I just drew a line down there. And I said, I can't fix this. I can't heal the whole thing. But as far as I know, Lord, I want to just let it go. And I just walked over that. Now, memories still can be there and hurts can still be there. But time, loving people, others there, that helped. Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, thank you for asking that. You helped me to think through a little bit. And I really hope that is of help, Jim. And I'd like to learn what you learned. Everybody here would have some thoughts to share about that.